11:47 p.m. My husband was already asleep beside me when my phone lit up. The message was only one line. What if we secretly keep a little piece of each other? I stared at the screen and my hand went cold. Outside the window, the night was so still I could hear the wind slipping through the curtain. Inside this room, everything was familiar. My husband's steady breathing, the blanket my child had kicked away earlier, the faint scent of laundry still lingering on the pillow. A peaceful home. The kind of peace people look at and assume nothing could ever shake. And yet, with one message, I knew something had just crossed the threshold of my life. A poisoned wind. Not loud, not violent, just enough to stir what I thought had been sleeping quietly for years. I'm 32 now. I have a husband. I have children. I have the kind of life that looks stable from the outside. We are not rich, but we have enough. We are not glamorous, but every evening, I still have a place that feels like home. My days move between work, meals, school notes, bills, sick kids, small laughter, small worries. The ordinary things that quietly build a family. I used to think this was how my life would continue. Calm, ordered, settled. No more room for the kind of emotions that belong to youth. Until I saw my first love again. The man who had once shared the brightest 3 years of my youth. Back then, we loved each other like love itself would be enough. We ate from the same lunchbox after class. We walked in the rain without caring where we were going. We believed that as long as the feeling was real, everything else would somehow work out. Young people are foolish that way. We think strong love can defeat distance. We think it can defeat family, fear, timing, reality. It can't. We didn't break up because of betrayal. We didn't break up because we stopped loving each other. And maybe that was exactly why it hurt for so long. His family objected. Life pulled us in different directions after graduation. The arguments that started as desperate attempts to hold on slowly turned into exhaustion. And one day, we let go. Not because we wanted to, but because holding on was tearing us apart. An unfinished love is the hardest kind to bury, because it doesn't die when the feelings are gone. It gets buried while the fire is still alive. Then time did what time always does. It dulled the sharp edges. We lost contact. We married other people. We built other lives. I thought that chapter had finally gone quiet. But some memories do not disappear. They just lie still, waiting for the right face, the right moment, the right glance to wake up again. 8 years later, I saw him at a class reunion. The moment he walked in, something inside me paused. Not because he looked completely different, but because he still carried pieces of the boy I used to know. The slight tilt of his smile when he felt awkward. The way he greeted people with that same calm politeness. The way familiarity can survive inside a stranger's older face. He had a wife now, a little daughter. We sat not too far from each other. At first, it was harmless, just polite conversation. Work, life, where we lived now, how many children we had. I told him about my family. He told me about his. We both smiled the right kind of smile. Anyone looking at us would have thought we were just two old classmates catching up. Even I wanted to believe that. I told myself it was just one evening, just old memories passing through, just a small ache that would settle after one night's sleep. But 2 weeks later, the messages started. At first, they were innocent. How have you been lately? Is work still stressful? How old is your oldest now? You looked the same that night, just older in a beautiful way. I knew I should not have replied too much, but I did, almost without thinking.
And that was what scared me the most, how natural it felt. As if there had been an old door inside me,
closed for years, and all it took was one soft knock for it to open again. We had once known each other too well, the kind of knowing that stays in your bones, the kind where one short sentence is enough to recognize the other person's mood. Some people, once they have gone that deep into your life, can still make your heart lose its balance, even after years of silence. The conversations got longer, not openly flirtatious, not inappropriate right away. That was what made it dangerous. It slipped into my life through concern, through warmth, through the illusion of being understood in a way that felt effortless. And then last night, he sent me that message. I've never really forgotten you. Sometimes I still think, if I had been stronger back then, maybe things would be different. What if we keep a relationship just for us? Nothing too much, just texts sometimes. Maybe meet once in a while when life gets heavy. I promise no one would know. It would never affect our families. I just want to make it up to you. When I finished reading, my heart was pounding so hard I thought my husband might hear it in his sleep. I sat there in the dark for a long time, staring at the light in my hand. This same hand had held my children, cooked dinner, signed school papers, reached for medicine in the middle of the night, held my husband's hand through the hardest years. And yet, in that moment, it was trembling because of a man from my past. I hated how weak I felt, because if I'm honest, I have to admit this. I was tempted. Not because I no longer love my husband, not because my family is unhappy, but because marriage, after many years, can gather a thin layer of routine over everything. The person beside you every day becomes so familiar that you forget there was once fire there too. And then someone from your past appears, carrying old memories, unfinished feelings, and that intoxicating sense of being seen. It feels like sudden rain falling on dry ground. You know it isn't your season anymore, and still, a part of you wants to stand in that rain for one more minute. Then my mind began to scream. It won't affect our families. What a cruel lie. There is no betrayal that doesn't affect someone. There is no knife that enters a marriage without leaving a wound. A private relationship sounds harmless when dressed in soft words, but I knew exactly where that road leads. Hidden messages, deleted chats, small lies, meetings disguised as something else. Sitting at the dinner table with my husband and children, while a part of me belongs somewhere it should never have gone. An affair does not begin in a bed. It begins the moment you feel excitement waiting for a message from someone who is not yours. And I had already crossed into that moment. What frightened me most was not that he was wrong. It was that I was still capable of being moved by something I knew was wrong. I turned and looked at my husband. He was sleeping deeply after a long day. His face in the dark was not dramatic, not cinematic, not the kind of face that makes your heart race the way it once did in your 20s. But it was the face that had stood beside me through childbirth, sleepless nights, money worries, fevers, and every ordinary battle that quietly makes a life together. The man who wakes up to make milk for the children. The man who remembers to buy medicine when I forget to take care of myself. The man who may not speak in poetry, but who is always there when this family needs him.
And the other man?
He was not offering to give up everything and come back for love. He wanted both. His family and me as a secret shelter for his emotions. That is not love. That is greed, dressed up as regret. I got out of bed and walked into the living room. The night wind was still moving outside the balcony. The city was quiet, with just a few distant lights left on. And suddenly, I remembered the girl I used to be. The girl who once loved him with everything she had. The girl who cried over a future that never happened. I felt tenderness for her. But I also wanted to tell her something. Not everything unfinished deserves to be reopened. Some things are beautiful only because they belong to memory. The moment you drag them into the present, they stop being beautiful. They stain both the present and the past. I opened the message again. My fingers hovered over the screen for a long time. Then I typed, slowly. We both have families now. What you are asking for is not healing. It is betrayal. I do not need a hidden corner to feel remembered. I choose the piece of the life I have built. Please do not contact me again. I read it once. No more, no less. Then I blocked his number. It took only a few seconds, but when the screen went dark, it felt like I had just closed an old door inside my life. And this time, I was the one locking it. I did not feel instantly relieved. I did not feel proud. I just felt a sharp emptiness in my chest, like I had buried a piece of my youth for the second time. I stood there in silence for a long while. Maybe growing up is not about never feeling tempted. Maybe it is about feeling everything and still knowing what must end. I went back into the bedroom, pulled the blanket over my child, and lay down beside my husband again. In his sleep, he turned slightly and reached for my shoulder, almost out of instinct. Just that small touch. And suddenly, my eyes burned. Some winds pass through your life only to remind you how fragile the human heart really is. But some homes teach you that being fragile does not give you permission to destroy what is good. That night, I could not fall asleep right away. I lay there listening to the breathing of the people I love most, listening to the silence of the house, and I realized something. Peace is never something that simply appears and stays. It is protected. Protected by boundaries. Protected by clarity. Protected by the painful choices we make when nobody is watching. And sometimes, the hardest thing is not losing someone you once loved. Sometimes, the hardest thing is suffocating a feeling you know is wrong, just to protect what is right. But if I had to choose again, I would still choose the same way. Because some poisoned winds, no matter how soft they feel, should only be allowed to pass by. Do not open the door. Do not invite them in. Do not trade a real home for a beautiful lie. I almost made the worst mistake of my life because of one message in the middle of the night. Thankfully, before it was too late, I understood this. The person worth keeping is not the one who makes your heart race with regret. It is the one lying beside you, building a real life with you, every single day.